He was speaking to us from Jerusalem. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, as we go back now to the story of top Democrats chiding Obama for not consulting with them before announcing the pick, and have suggested they might oppose Leon Panetta to be head of Central Intelligence Agency. In a brief statement, the new chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Dianne Feinstein of California, said, quote, "My position has consistently been, I believe the agency is best served by having an intelligence professional in charge at this time." The outgoing Intelligence Committee chair, Democratic Senator Jay Rockefeller of West Virginia, says he shares Feinstein's concerns. It's interesting to compare that to how lawmakers are greeting Obama's other top intelligence pick. While members of Obama's own party vow a tough confirmation hearing for Leon Panetta, who has written against torture during the Bush administration, they've expressed no reservations about another nominee who has been accused of supporting torture and murder abroad. The former commander of the U.S. military forces in the Pacific, Admiral Dennis Blair, has been tapped to become the director of national intelligence. He would be Panetta's boss. It's the nation's top intelligence job, overseeing 16 agencies. Admiral Blair played a critical role in backing the Indonesian occupation of East Timor during the 1990s. At the height of the wave of attacks on Timorese that killed hundreds and displaced tens of thousands in 1999, Admiral Blair personally informed top Indonesian General Wiranto of unwavering U.S. support. He continued to support the Indonesian military until international outcry forced the Clinton administration to withdraw its military and diplomatic backing. Yesterday, we began our conversation on Dennis Blair with Allan Nairn, an award-winning investigative journalist who's reported from Indonesia for years. In 1999, he broke the story on Blair's secret meeting backing the Indonesian military. Today, Allan Nairn is back in the firehouse with us for part 2 of this discussion. We did invite Admiral Blair to join us on this broadcast, but he declined our request through a spokesperson, saying nominees would speak after the inauguration. Allan Nairn, to summarize, you were in East Timor in 1999 when the people of East Timor were voting for independence. Can you talk about the period leading up to that and what Admiral Blair had to do with it?
The Indonesian military had invaded East Timor after a go-ahead from President Ford and Henry Kissinger. They killed a third of the population, the greatest proportional genocide since the Nazis. They established an occupation in which no one could speak. People could be dragged from their homes, tortured, executed at any moment. But the Timorese resisted. In '91, there was a massacre outside the cemetery in Dili, the massacre which we survived. They killed hundreds of people. That got a bit of international attention. The political tide started to turn when Suharto, the U.S.-backed dictator of Indonesia, fell in '98. After that, the Timorese were granted the right to have a vote, a free election, a UN-supervised referendum on whether they wanted to be independent. The Indonesian army decided that they would try to derail this free election. They set up militias to terrorize the population. Throughout 1999, they would attack civilians, raid churches. In several incidents, they raped nuns and burned the bodies. In the midst of this, after the massacre at the church in Likisa, in which about 50 were killed, hacked to death with machetes.
Likisa in East Timor.
In East Timor. Their entrails hanging from the walls. Admiral Blair, at that time the commander of U.S. forces in the Pacific, personally went and met with the Indonesian military commander, General Wiranto. Blair had a mission which had been given to him by the U.S. State Department and White House to tell Wiranto, stop the massacres. Blair did not do that. He apparently defied what he had been sent to do, and he instead reassured Wiranto. This is according to the confidential cables which reported on the meeting, the U.S. cables. He offered new U.S. military aid to Wiranto. He invited him to come to Hawaii as his guest. He offered assistance for the BRIMOB, the paramilitary police that had directly participated in the Likisa massacre. When word got back to Washington, The State Department said, you can't do this, you have to talk to Wiranto again. He called Wiranto on the phone and again did not tell him to shut the militias down. Wiranto was delighted. He escalated the militia terror. The killing of Timorese civilians increased. At one point in July of '99, Blair sent in his subordinate, Admiral Clemens, who was running the U.S. Navy in the Pacific, for meetings with the Indonesian military about setting up a U.S. base training facility in Surabaya. The message from Admiral Blair was that the U.S. military was backing Indonesia's army as they were massacring churches and killing civilians in East Timor. Now, we just heard the clip where President-elect Obama said he was talking about a departure from past practice. Yesterday, the think tank of Podesta, the transition chief for Obama, put out an item in which they said that the nomination of Blair and other officials is indicative of Obama's intent to work within the rule of law. Supporting those who are massacring churches is working within the rule of law. If that is the Obama administration's definition of the rule of law, that means it is no departure from past U.S. practice, because in dozens of countries over the years, the U.S. has supported forces which kill civilians. And this suggests that Obama plans to continue that and simply say he's complying with the law. Explain how you know what Dennis Blair, the admiral in charge of the Pacific Command at the time, said to General Wiranto in a private meeting. I got the cables, which were the transcripts of the meetings, prepared by Blair's people. When they have meetings, they have their aides sitting there. They prepare an official report. It's classified. It's sent back to Washington, and I obtained those cables. You had a chance to question President Clinton about this. We went to East Timor, May 20th, 2002, at the time that the people of East Timor celebrated their independence, where East Timor became an independent nation. The next day, President Clinton, who was there representing, interestingly, President Bush at the time, President Clinton went to the building that was being dedicated as the U.S. Embassy in East Timor. And after he spoke, you questioned him about this whole situation and about Admiral Blair. This is an excerpt of your interaction.
President Clinton, you sold weapons to the Indonesian military. You brought General Suharto, the Indonesian dictator, to the Oval Office and offered him F-16s. The next day, a White House official told the New York Times Suharto was our kind of guy. Your administration, under the JSET program, sent Green Berets into Indonesia. They trained the Indonesian Kopassus Special Forces in advanced sniper technique, urban warfare, and similar tactics. In 1999, in April, when the Indonesian military and their militias massacred. I'm getting to the point. I'm getting to the point. Yes, I'm getting exactly to the point. You were just talking about freedom in Timor. In 1990, give me a hand. I want to ask you about the facts, President. In 1999, in April, the Indonesian military and their militias massacred 50 people in the rectory in Likisa. They hacked them with machetes. 2 days later, Admiral Blair, the commander for the Pacific, your commander, met with General Wiranto, the Indonesian commander. He offered to help him in lobbying the U.S. Congress to get full U.S. military training restored. He made no mention of the Likisa massacre. During that same period, the Indonesian militias rampaged here in downtown Dili. They attacked the house of Manuel Carrascalao. They massacred the refugees there. Yet you continued for months with aid to the Indonesian military. Why?
Question, sir.
Why do you continue with aid to the Indonesian military as they were killing civilians?
I can't answer the question you asked about Admiral Blair. You'll have to ask him that, because I'm not aware of that.
He was working for you. Why did you continue military aid to Indonesia?
I understand that. I think, first of all, I don't believe America or any of the other countries was sufficiently sensitive in the beginning and for a long time before 1999, going all the way back to the 70s, to the suffering of the people of East Timor. I don't think we can defend everything we did. I think that our objective, which was to try to keep Indonesia from coming apart and from having some of the influences that I think we still worry about in Indonesia dominate, led us to do some things which in my judgment, made us not as sensitive as we should have been to the suffering of the people here. And all I can tell you is that when it became obvious to me what was really going on, and that we couldn't justify not standing up for what the East Timorese wanted and for decent treatment for them.
That was an excerpt of your interaction, Allan Nairn, with President Clinton as he was dedicating the new U.S. Embassy in East Timor. His response, you specifically questioned him about Blair.
And he didn't deny it. And Blair, at the time, did not issue a denial. And Blair, if it's not true, Blair should come on here and we can debate face to face. But it clearly is true.
Was he carrying out U.S. policy at the time, simply following orders?
No, at the time he was U.S. policy had